Hello and welcome everyone for today's session on getting started with AI, that is artificial intelligence, which I presume you all, it was implied, getting started with AI for your small business. I'm really excited about today's session, and I probably put more research into this session than I've done in some other ones, just because there is so much to know, and candidly, we are only going to scratch the surface today. I've got some good news and bad news as we go on later today, but I really want to hit on some of the quick takes. My purpose today, our purpose today, is really to help all of you have a better understanding of artificial intelligence that you can use today. And then I also think it's really important that the more you understand the way artificial intelligence works, and we're just going to scratch the surface of that today, there are some things you could do to for your organization, some plans you can make, some assessments you could be doing to figure out how you can prepare your organization to leverage AI into the future. And so we're going to talk about that today by going through some of these topics. By the way, I'm Nate. I always forget to introduce myself. I'm Nate. I'll be leading you through the presentation today. Stephanie's behind the scene facilitating the production. So thanks for joining us today. So we're going to start with some foundational basic understanding of AI. I think that if you, as doing some research and really understanding how AI from a basic perspective works, it helps you understand where the strengths and limitations are. So I think that's important as you're thinking about applying it to your organization. And then we're going to say, well, what are some of the business problems we face where AI can actually help? Because contrary to maybe popular belief, AI can't solve every problem. It's not there yet. It's nowhere near it. But there are certain areas that you can focus on in your business where AI can really help and leverage and amplify your efforts. What's the AI you can use today? And I'm going to actually go through a little bit of demonstration on that. Not exhaustive by any means, but definitely a little bit of a demonstration of things you could start using today or playing with or trying or testing. And then going through preparation for the future, suggestions, and next steps. Part of this too is we're going to be, we haven't scheduled them yet, but we're going to be doing some AI workshops because there's some pretty cool tools where we want to be able to help people through them. So stay tuned for that coming into 2024, where we're going to be hosting some of those sessions for folks to be able to leverage AI more thoroughly in their organization. Before we get going, I always like to hit 1 minute about MyTech. You know, we are a business and technology consulting organization that works with small, medium businesses. That's it. We don't work with the enterprise. We work with the small and medium. That's where we focus our efforts and time. We have a proven IT strategy that we know delivers proven and reliable results for our clients. It's not the only strategy. We're not even saying it's the best strategy. We're just saying we know it's proven and it works and it delivers consistent results when we collaborate with our clients together. We know it removes IT challenges ultimately so you can focus on the things that are more important, like serving your clients and being more adaptable to other business challenges like AI that gets thrown at us because no one probably asked for AI to happen, but guess what? It's happening. Now we got to figure out how to use it. So working together, our clients can achieve 4 times more value and productivity from their IT investments. That's not why you're here today, but if anybody's interested to have a conversation about that, love to chat. But otherwise, let's get moving. All right, so let's start with some of the basics of AI and understanding some of the foundations. So I'm going to make sure I've got my notes pulled up here. So first of all, generative AI is that's the third bullet here. ChatGPT, Google Bard, Microsoft CoPilot. That's really the iteration of AI at a high level where we're at today. And so I think that's something that I want to make sure that you kind of have a concept of what we're talking about. It's generative AI. Those are based on the first bullet point, large language models, LLMs. And again, this might be foundational for some of you that are on listening today, listening to the recording. But LLMs have different, especially large language models. Again, the large implies that there's hundreds of billions, and I mean that with a B, hundreds of billions, if not into the trillions of words and phrases and content that it's trained on. There are smaller language models that may be only trained on 1 million or 10 million or even 100 million words and phrases. But when we're talking about the generative AI that exists today, part of what's made some of the leap in performance and the way these can be leveraged is because it's been trained on hundreds of billions, if not into the trillions of words and phrases. So that's what large language models means. We're going to reference that a little bit later. Generative pre-trained transformer. So, you all hear Chat GTP or GPT, excuse me. Well, that's what it means. I wanted to make sure that we I figured I was going to get a question like, well, what does GPT mean? Well, that's what it means. It's basically, and then the chat part of it is because it's leveraging chat to be able to generate pre-trained transformers. So it's basically being able to analyze content and be able to share that content and regurgitate it in creative ways or leverage it in similar ways that it's seen and been trained on using before. So it's able to generate that information from what it's training. And so when you get into like the Chat GPT, it's because you're using chat to leverage the GPT function. So that's really what that means. Again, I thought that was important trivia since we're using the acronym like every day when we talk about it, but I don't know if we all knew what that meant. And then the other thing that I want to delineate between today is, people, you might hear people talking about how AI, the risk to human existence or the risk of AI taking over the world. That's really not generative AI that we're working on today and we're talking about today. That's really a phrase that's called artificial general intelligence. And the accepted definition, there are different definitions that are out there, but the accepted definition, widely accepted, is the AI that can do any intellectual task that a human can. And a lot of the research that I've done on this topic, most of those experts feel like we are multiple decades away from even achieving artificial general intelligence, and none of them believe that it's going to be the end of the universe or the world. But I thought I'd delineate between some of these foundational basics when we're talking about AI. Okay, so next, the other thing I like to reference with AI being a general purpose technology. Why do I say that? It's because there's a couple other technologies that we use every day that are also considered general purpose technologies that I think can help you relate to AI, and that is electricity. Electricity is a general purpose technology that gets used in a lot of different ways. AI is similar. The internet is another general purpose technology that gets used in lots of different ways. And so if you think about AI in that capacity, there's a nearly unlimited amount of ways in which AI can be leveraged, just like electricity and just like the internet, and that it's going to evolve rapidly over time. But it's just something that I thought was an interesting takeaway from some of the research and education on this topic. One of the things so let's talk about LLMs. I mentioned earlier that I was going to get a little bit deeper on what LLMs mean, but the core function of a large language model, or the LLMs, is to use their training to repeatedly predict the next word. When you really break it down, that's what LLMs do. And so you'll in the demonstration I'll show you, but I'm sure you've all seen this. How many times have you been writing a text message and it's trying to predict the word? How many times are you entering into the search engine and it's trying to predict the next word, right? It's even in Word documents, it might be trying to predict the next word. So you've already seen and leveraged and used, all of us, I guarantee, some facet or capacity of LLMs, in that it's trying to predict your next word. That's ultimately what it does and how it's trained. And then generative AI uses that capacity to be able to then generate content and help you do summarizations and things like that. So it's pretty interesting when you really break it down that that's what an LLM does and that's what it's trained to do. And then it's how do you leverage that in other capacities. And so those other capacities, for example, is that the AI that's readily available to pretty much anyone today. There's free versions. There's also versions that are included in your Microsoft 365 licensing, by the way. In fact, probably everyone on the call today or listening has access to a paid version of like Bing Enterprise Chat, for example. We'll get to that here into the demo, but AI that's the chat version of leveraging an LLM, like the GPT that was referenced earlier. But AI can also be built into software applications, chatbots, web interfaces, et cetera. So there can be automation that's built on these things by training AI to be able to solve these problems. But again, this is an example of it's a general purpose technology, in that some of the things I'm going to show you is where it's built into a web interface. But one of the examples is also how you can build your own CoPilot chatbot through one of the tools that we're not going to go deep on that, but I'm going to shout it out and call it out, and it'll be a part of the follow-up communication as well. So these are some of the other basics. One of the things that as we understand some of those basics, like for instance, knowing that an LLM is consistently trying to predict the next word, what are some of the strengths of that technology of how that works and the way it's trained? Well, it's it's a good brainstorming companion. Like if you're trying to get started, it's a good writing companion. If you're trying to start a draft of something, and I'll give you an illustration of that in the demo as well. If you have a lot of reading to do, one of the things that the CoPilot, if you have CoPilot that's based into Outlook, you can have Outlook read through your emails and summarize things where there might be tasks in there. There's things like that. It can read lots amount of content, and you say, hey, please summarize in bullet form the key takeaways from this article or this blog or this website. There's things like that you can do. So it's good at reading and summarizing tasks, and it's good at chatting, as we've exampled with ChatGPT and others like Google Bard and Microsoft Copilot. So there's also limitations. So the way the LLMs are trained, like they're trained with content up to a certain point. A lot of the ones that are out today, the dates that I heard is that January of 2022 is where some of the content, at least in the current models, are cut off. So if you asked AI to summarize the news articles from the last 24 hours, it really wouldn't be able to do it because it doesn't know that, because the knowledge cutoff happened where it was trained. And so this is going to iterate and evolve over time, of course, and that I imagine that timeline is going to get shorter and shorter as this technology gets better. But just know that there are limitations as far as where its knowledge exists. Like if you ask it about certain current things, it might not know it because of when the knowledge cutoff was trained. I like the word hallucinations. You've probably read articles or heard stories about it, but sometimes AI, it'll make stuff up. One of the examples that I saw that I thought was humorous is like, give me 3 quotes that Shakespeare said about Beyonce. And well, Shakespeare existed many, many generations before Beyonce, so there's no way that Shakespeare had any quotes about Beyonce, but you might be able to ask generative AI that question, and depending on which one you're using, it might actually make up an answer for you, which is obviously not true. So there's things like that you do have to worry about, and especially when you're doing research. There was an example of a lawyer that had used ChatGPT to come up with some arguments, and one of the cases that was referenced by the AI was wrong. It actually didn't even exist, and that lawyer actually got in trouble because submitted formal court documents to the court. So there are things where if you're really trying to source content from AI, make sure to validate the sources and validate the information before you're maybe formally presenting it. There's current input length limitations, right? So you can't necessarily upload an unlimited amount of information. There's, I think, in Microsoft's Copilot, there's a 2,000 character or 2,000 word limitation. And so as far as your context and the requests that you're making, so there's input length that is limited in its current capabilities. The other thing, the last one that's very concerning, and that one of the things that a lot of like Microsoft and Google and all the other organizations that are working to advance AI are concerned about, is that AI is trained on the content that we as human beings put out, and human beings are fallible. We have mistakes, we have biases, we have all this kind of stuff. And so how do we try? And so because AI is trained on all that stuff, then that can come out in the results. And so just be aware as you're leveraging AI that the content that you might ask it to create could include that information. And so do what you feel is appropriate to use it ethically, responsibly, for inclusivity and trying to drive out bias. So just know that there are limitations to AI, but understanding its strengths allows you, I think, to assess where are some of the business values that you can solve with it. So let's talk about that. I think, look, the reason why I put limitation of time up there is because ultimately that's our biggest commodity is time. How do we optimize our time? And so that's in all the research that I've done. AI is really, where can you identify areas where AI can help you save time? So these are some of the examples that align with AI's strengths: content creation and proofreading. Right? You've probably seen it in your Word documents if you create them, how it tries to proofread. In fact, I'll give you a couple examples of the editor and how it can make suggestions and things like that. The other thing conceptually is to say some of these tasks that you might find, whether you build it into a software application or just into the web, is that you might start with augmentation. Like there's customer service chatbots, for example, might be able to suggest to a human customer service representative, hey, maybe this is what you might be able to say. But then the human to maybe make the human's job faster, but then they have to approve it before it actually gets released. So there's augmentation of tasks that is really initially where folks are seeing AI being leveraged, and then eventually, as it is used more and more and trained more and more and more and more confident in the accuracy and proficiency, you move towards automation over time. So these are some of the things to think about as it relates to business problems that can be solved. It's good at analyzing data. It's good at summarizing information, like taking a lot of information and then being able to summarize it for you. And really, generative AI can really amplify HI, or human intelligence. And another concept that I think is a good one to talk about when you think about how AI and some of the problems it can solve is that all of our jobs are comprised of X number of tasks. Maybe it's 10 tasks, 50 tasks, 100 tasks, different types of tasks that we all end up executing. AI can be good at replacing or augmenting some of those tasks, not all of them. So it's not expected that AI is really going to by default, by de facto replace jobs. It's just, it can help you and it can simplify some of the tasks that those jobs complete so that those jobs actually can be amplified to do more of what human intelligence is good at doing. The only other message I would say relative to that last line that I've heard over and over again at some conferences that I've gone to, as well as just some research, is that if you are in a position where you don't choose to identify and figure out how you can leverage AI in your role and in your task, well, then maybe your job will be replaced, right? And that is definitely something that we've been hearing, is that it's not going to replace jobs unless you just choose to kind of stick your head in the sand. And that could be an individual, that could be an organization. And I think that's the risk, and hopefully why we're sharing this information today is let's start figuring out so we don't get behind, right? Even though AI is only really a year old in its current capacity, but sometimes I already feel like I'm behind. And so hopefully we can work together to close those gaps. So anyway, so these are some of the key business problems: limitations of time, and thinking about the tasks that it might be able to replace or simplify before we go into not necessarily jobs entirely. So, all right, then bad news, good news. First of all, for most of us on this call, we are probably less than a 300-person organization. So Microsoft CoPilot for Microsoft 365, I believe that's the actual formal name. That is, first of all, there's a minimum E3 or E5 SKU. Most folks that we work with have business premium SKUs. And there's a minimum 300-seat subscription at $30 a seat on top of all that. So it's a significant investment. If especially if you're a small organization, which Microsoft really isn't releasing it for small organizations yet. And I was fortunate enough, by the way, at a conference that I attended earlier this year, to speak with directly the Microsoft representative that owns the small business division of Microsoft. And I said, when is it going to be ready for small business? And he said two things. He said, one, it was not what I expected. It's like there's a limited number of GPUs or graphical processing units on the planet. So AI is really powered by basically video cards. That's candidly the technology that's the foundation of accelerating AI. And there's a finite number of those. And so part of the release of this is that Microsoft, Google, Amazon, they don't really know, because it's new, how this is going to scale. And so they're really limiting who has access to it and trying to make sure that when it is extended, that they built out the right infrastructure and all the data centers and all that kind of stuff. So that's one of the challenges that all organizations, including Microsoft, are facing, and that's going to limit our ability to start leveraging more of the capabilities of AI because they're putting requirements and restrictions on it, like shown here. There are still some things we're going to show you today you can use. That's really the good news. But the second thing that he mentioned, and this is a little foreshadowing of what I'm going to talk about as far as preparing your organization, is that the way AI and some of the capabilities that we're not, as small businesses, able to use yet today, because we just don't have the from Microsoft, it's just not available, is that AI really requires a couple things. It requires structured data, and it requires it to be in the cloud for the most part, for pretty much all intents and purposes. So as small businesses, we don't always do a good job of having structured data. We don't always do a good job of having consistent processes. So garbage in, garbage out as far as information. AI can help us with that, with structured data, and provide insights to that. But if we don't have consistent data, we don't have confidence in our data and our processes and our procedures and our training for our people to be consistent, then AI might not really be able to amplify the information because, again, it doesn't have great information to work with in the first place. And a lot of small businesses aren't yet in the cloud. A lot of enterprises are. And so as you think about getting your data to the cloud, that could be sending it to a Dataverse, which, again, I'm not going to go into detail on all these kind of things, but these are the kind of things for you to think about as you're trying to prepare your organization for leveraging AI in the future. I'll touch on that a little bit later too. But the good news is Bing CoPilot, or what was the enterprise chat, is available, and it is included in business premium SKUs, which most of the clients we work with, most of the small business folks we know, use business premium SKUs, and that is available. So let's, without further ado, I do want to hit on a little bit of some demonstration on what AI is available today. So I've got a few things that I'm going to go into, and I'm not going to go super deep because it's not that incredible. But I wanted to show you an example of how LLMs, again, you've seen this over and over again, but how LLMs are repeatedly trying to predict the next word. So when I just start typing a word, and what's happening there on the screen is AI is trying to predict what am I going to write. And so it's trying to give me suggestions. Right? AMD even spelled it wrong. Writing. Right? So it's trying to do that. So this is basically an example of how, and this has been in existence for a long time, of how these LLMs are just trying to predict the next word that you might search. So that's the first thing I wanted to just illustrate, is that this is an example of you basically already been using AI, just didn't necessarily realize it. But this is the foundation of what has built then into more generative AI. So I'm going to go to the next tab here, and I have a link. And in fact, part of the follow-up email that we're going to send to all of you is links to key resources. I have hundreds of links from research I've done, but I'm synthesizing it down to a handful of resources that'll help you get more information like this, as far as like what can you do. It gives you a lot more information in the browser. Gives you capabilities. It goes deep into some of the things that you can do, right? With the different capabilities. But also, there's a couple trainings, free, by the way. In fact, one of them is free, but you can pay $49 to actually get a certificate that I would highly recommend. And is the one done by Andrew Ng, I believe that's how you pronounce his name. NG is the last name. Stanford professor, just a pioneer in AI, and works with a lot of. And so he did it's several hours, but it's free. He did a phenomenal breakdown of AI, and if anyone who's listening today or in the future is truly interested in trying to think through and understand how you might be able to leverage this technology to the advantage of your organization, or even personally, whatever that might look like, take that course, and that'll be in the follow-up email. We'll send that to you. Again, it's free. You can pay $49 if you want to take the certification, but it is free. That is, so here, we'll provide the resources like this, but then I've got the new Bing chat. So if you're in Bing, and by the way, this is a Bing capability. So for those of you who like Google as your search engine, just know that Bing is going to be where Microsoft is putting all these resources. And I want to show you a couple things as it relates to Bing. One of the big concerns that people have is the confidentiality and security of your data. Well, so if you're logged in, so notice I'm logged in as my username, and notice it gives me this protected icon here, it gives me a little indicator down here, but this information is saying, if I hover over it, your personal and company data are protected in this chat. So if you think about your Microsoft 365 environment and the information you put into Teams or the information you put into SharePoint, that is protected. It's secured by Microsoft inside of your tenant. And so if you're using Bing and you're logged in, and of course this is if you have the Business Premium license, you have access to this today for you to be able to use. And so this is something that just know, and again, you look for this, but if you just log in as your same username and password that you do for 365, probably your same username and password for your organization, you have access to this information if you have Bing Enterprise, if you have the Business Premium SKUs. So that's important. I want to share about confidentiality and security because it's a big part of this. And then you can start asking things. So one of the things I like is translation. Just give an example of some translation. So I'm going to write, please help me translate this sentence into Spanish. I could probably misspell that and it would still come back probably correct. So what's happening right now is that it's taking my request, and then notice how it says searching for translate. I'm looking for a place to eat to Spanish. It basically takes the request of what I wrote, it reinterprets it in a way that it can plug into the LLM large language module and spit it out, right? So, sure, I can help you with that. Here's the sentence, and then it gives me even some nuances of ways in which I can use, and talks about being translator. Google Translate, so it gives me resources and references. So this is an example of being able to use AI. And like if you try to put this into a search engine, it would just search that. It wouldn't necessarily give you a response. And that's one of the differences of using like the Bing Chat versus just the search. So anyway, that's examples. I'm going to ask something else. I'm going to say, now I want to say, please help me. This is a little thing I found in researching that I think that you all find. Translate sentence into pirate English. I bet you didn't expect that, did you? Hope some people are chuckling right now. All right, so here it goes. Translation, pirate English. Ahoy, matey. I can help you with that. I be seeking a place to grub. So just you can have some fun with it as well. Another one that I found is kind of fun is like tell an AI joke. Again, I said and AI joke, but see, it still understood what I was saying. What do you call a neural network that likes to tell jokes? A pun-isher. Geez, there we go. So again, I'm not promising that they're the best jokes, but hey, if you like dad jokes, that's probably where you're going to go. So this is some things you can do. Again, I know that, but you can also ask it to create things, right? One of the things that you can also ask is that create image of a puppy at Christmas. So it'll create images. So that's something that you can do as well. And so when you look through some of these things, that it can create a lot of content, but the idea is that you can even then give it context. So so now it's going through the generic image. This is not the image, but this is actually using, you'll see the DALL-E, DALL, I think -E image creator, because it's basically sourcing all this content across. The LLM has learned on images as well. So here you go. So this is create an image of a puppy at Christmas. So if you're trying to put together a newsletter or a Christmas card or a holiday card or whatever, these are just different images that are created by just saying, please create an image of puppy at Christmas. Now, one of the things that I promised all of you is that, actually, I'm going to show you one other thing. I promised all of you in the registration is that a company policy for the use of artificial intelligence. I think this is one of the things that is really important. And I used AI to do this, by the way. I said, hey, please help me create a company policy for the use of artificial intelligence. Please focus on that we want to use Microsoft tools because that's what our organization pays for. And please focus on security and confidentiality and ethical use. So it spit out, so with like that little instruction, it basically spit out this policy. And again, I'm not going to read it to you here, but I didn't want to use it, but we will follow up. And again, you could just do this yourself very easily, and it'll probably give you a very similar result. But we will share this with you as part of the follow-up, just as something you can take if you're looking to employ in your organization. There are a lot of organizations out there that are basically doing something like this, but they're saying you can't use the public version of ChatGPT. You can't use public versions of these things because of the security and confidentiality of data. And so I do think it is important because you have people in your organization that are using AI today, I promise you, and they might not be using it and thinking about the confidentiality of it. So if you have the business premium SKU with Microsoft, you can prescribe, you have the security there, right? It keeps it secure and confidential inside your space. And so you can prescribe that. You can only use AI tools that are part of this and part of what we pay for as an organization. And it does get into things like evaluation AI tools, don't use tools, get approval before you use anything other than what we talk about. We want to make sure that there's security compliance. We want to make sure that there's ethical use and responsible use. But the other reason why I wanted to show this to you is because this is a Word document. AI created this, so it actually has a pretty good editor score already. If I had written this, the editor score would be way less. But when you click on the editor option up here, you have the option of flipping between formal, professional, casual writing, and it'll review what you're doing differently. I clicked formal. If I want to look at grammar corrections, it'll take me to it and make a suggestion. Consider what to use differently. Again, this is using AI too. If it wants to give clarity, hey, this didn't give me the clarity. Sometimes it gives a suggestion, sometimes it doesn't. But my point in all of this is that when you're using and when you see these things, it's actually using AI. It's using its knowledge of being trained on hundreds of billions of words and phrases to potentially make suggestions around punctuation, clarity, etc. And so you have this available today as well, the editor that's available in any Word. This isn't CoPilot for Word. This is just the editor. CoPilot for Word would do much deeper. That's not even available. So I wasn't even really able to test as far as what that does. But that's one of the things I wanted to show you as far as what's AI capable. And then the last thing is AI. There's a very cool thing, and this is a little bit of a foreshadowing, and I'm not even really going to demo it. But there is a Microsoft copilotstudio.microsoft.com. Don't worry about writing it down. We're going to send it out. Or if you're listening in the future, you can write it down. But there, you can do a free trial, and you can actually create your own Copilot trained on your content. And I'll give you an example of one of the ways in which we are working and testing with this. We have a lot of clients that are going through this process of a file server to working into SharePoint. And it's hard. That change is hard to find the information you're seeking. Well, again, we're testing and playing with this right now, and this is what ideally one of those things that we're planning on putting together a workshop together so that we can work together and show you how to do this stuff. Is create a Copilot for your own organization to help your team find the information they're looking for, and using AI to do it. So similar to how you can search the web using AI, like creating content and summarizing content, you can build your own Copilot. It's actually relatively easy. I'm not going to get into it right now, but I wanted to highlight that because in case any of you maybe are a little more advanced than others and you're inclined to maybe play with it and try it, I would check it out. It looks really cool. I've seen some demos of it. And we're trying to figure out some ways in which we can help our clients use it in a practical way and teach you how to do it. So that's coming up. Stay tuned for future events on that. But for now, that's the last thing I wanted to show you from a demo perspective. So really, let's get into kind of closing up here. So I know I'm a couple minutes over here. So I want to touch on preparing your organization for the future. First of all, look, AI it's not going to replace jobs outright. There are tasks of jobs that it can use. So, and then when you think about that, well, what are the workflows? If you think about your workflows today and you try and insert and identify areas where AI might be able to help, what are those workflows and how might you be able to augment what you're doing? I'm not saying do it today as far as like change it all, but think about it. And try and test it and try. AI can identify patterns in large amounts of data. So the reason why I say that is because if you as a small business don't feel like if you do an introspective, rhetorical question of yourself, do we have structured data? Do we have good classification of data? Do we have good information that's consistent? If I ran reports out of my data, can I trust it? If you answer yes to all those questions, then you're probably in a pretty good position to be able to leverage AI in the near future when it becomes more available to small businesses. If the answer to any of those questions is no, these are the things where you should start thinking about, well, what can I get my structured data to look towards? Do I need to look at systems in the cloud, or there's opportunities to kind of sync your data to a Dataverse in the cloud from which AI can then search. And then AI can really help identify those patterns in large amounts of data to give you insights, to give you information that you might not necessarily see. And that's how AI is going to be able to help you, at least one of the ways in which it can help you in the future. So, but those three bullets right in the middle are really critical to understand that they all work together. Because if you have garbage in, garbage out, and you don't feel like you have good data, AI is not going to really be able to help you that much with your internal organizational data. And really then your systems, processes, people, and training all need to be aligned for this to work. So these are the things that, today there's things you can use in AI, but some of the capabilities that we don't even have available to us because it's just emerging. But these are the things that you could be working on in your organization over the coming months, quarters, and years to put you in a position to take advantage of AI when it becomes more available to small businesses. So our teams are going to be working along with in fact, we're revamping some of the ways in which we're engaging our clients to help have these conversations so we can help walk alongside you with a potential plan and give you some insight, and if we can be a guide to at least start a part of this process. So stay tuned for that, but these are the things you could be working on independent of whether or not you're working with MyTech, of course. So suggestions and next steps. Really, I can't stress the first one enough. You really need to educate yourself. This session hopefully gave you a primer of it and what you can start playing with today. But I would strongly recommend, if you feel serious about this and something you want to do, take advantage of some of the free training that we'll send out in the follow-up email, and educate yourself. Invest some time to educate yourself. I promise you, when I went through a lot of that stuff, it got my brain spinning on how we might be able to take advantage of this stuff in the future and the things that we could be working toward. So that's going to be a way in which you can help out. So identify those opportunities where AI can help, because it can't help in everywhere, but where it can save time, how do you augment your workflows so that you can actually use that time to do more or better work? And I would encourage you to play, test, and tools with the tools we talked about today. I gave you several examples of things you could do. So test and try and play with that. And then really try and think about building a plan. Like, look into the future and what do you want it to be, and try and reverse engineer that depending on where you need to prepare your organization for that future. So last thing, this is posted on our YouTube channel. We always share information there, so please subscribe. YouTube channel, follow us on LinkedIn, because we always communicate events that way. If you feel anyone could benefit from this conversation, please share it with them. Part of the reason why we do this is because we want all small businesses to be able to be competitive with the enterprises who are able to start using this stuff way ahead of us. And so please share it if it can help people on their journey. Join us for future events published at mytech.com. Like I said, we are going to be doing some workshops in 2024 to help small businesses be able to leverage these tools better as these tools emerge and become more available. And we host monthly 365 user group sessions. We have one tomorrow, in fact. So every month we have those. If you have folks that are like the power users of the champions in your organization, we'd love to see them there. Join us as we're trying to help them be better stewards and also be able to bring back 365 tips and tricks into your organization. So those are all free, and love to have you if it's applicable. So with that said, thank you so much for attending. I really appreciate you going through it. Hopefully, I'm definitely not a prescribed expert in all of this, but these are the things that trying to find a way in which we can get you started using AI in your small business. Hopefully gave you some tips that you can start using today, as well as thinking about for the future. So let's open it up for questions, and I'll do my best. Like I said, I'm not the prescribed expert in AI, but I'm happy to share anything that I've learned and that might be applicable.
Awesome. Thanks, Nate. We did have a question come through asking if you could use Microsoft CoPilot to create PowerPoint slides.
Yeah, that's a great question. So in fact, I'll use the chat here that I had up as an example, right? So even if you notice, by the way, the way the tab says it's CoPilot, even though here it's Bing, right? It's Bing Enterprise Chat. So and by the way, I meant to mention this earlier. This is also where I like to thank Microsoft for calling one thing that's leveraged in multiple different ways the same thing. So like it's when they call Teams and Teams and Teams, right? This is CoPilot, and CoPilot, there's CoPilot for the web, which is basically what we're doing here, and that is available in your business premium license. Then there's CoPilot for Microsoft 365, which is where, and what Microsoft's going to do, it's going to be embedded into every application. So all your Word documents, your PowerPoints, etc. So that's the primer and the precursor to answering your question, which is help me create a PowerPoint presentation on AI. I didn't do this, by the way, but it'll give you an example of what happens. So when you're in, and as it's going, this is what's happening. When you're in the chat function here, the CoPilot in the web, it will not create a PowerPoint presentation for you. It will spit out, as you'll see here, bullet points. It'll give you ideas. It'll give you context from which some of which you might be able to copy and paste into a slide and make it part of your PowerPoint presentation. It's going to give you references, as you see here, YouTube channels, things that you might be able to embed, but not until you're able to leverage CoPilot for PowerPoint, which is part of the CoPilot for Microsoft 365. And from what I understand, Microsoft is not going to be licensing those separately. It's not like you're going to be able to say, well, I just want CoPilot for PowerPoint. I just want it for Word. It's going to be across 365, and it'll just be embedded in all the tools. When it's embedded in all the tools, then you will be able to have it. It'll actually be able to create a PowerPoint for you based on a criteria like this, and you can tell it to put in images and all that kind of stuff. So again, I just said, help me create a PowerPoint presentation on AI. It did give me ideas and potentially bullets that I could use in a PowerPoint presentation, but it stops short of actually creating the PowerPoint presentation. But that will, from what I understand, that's going to be available when CoPilot for 365 is available. Again, that's that $30 SKU at the moment. Great question, though. It's a good example of where we are and where we aren't yet relative to what we can do. And that's a licensing limitation at the moment, not necessarily a functional limitation.
Thanks, Nate. There's no further questions at this time.
Okay. Well, thanks everyone again for attending. Hopefully, again, you gave you some nuggets that you can use and start employing. I would challenge you to, if you haven't played with that, test it, try it, play with it. When I say that, I mean just go to the Bing Enterprise Chat, log in. Again, if you see the protected, your data is basically containerized inside of your organization's, your company's 365 tenant, just like a document that you would save into your SharePoint portal or site. Try it, test it, see what it can do, see how you can find ways in which the tools can help you. Again, understand its strengths and limitations. So just as far as how you use it, but otherwise have some fun and stay tuned for more. This technology is rapidly advancing. It's changing every single day, and throughout 2024 and beyond, we're going to be doing our best to further your ability to use AI to benefit your organization. So stay tuned for more, and thanks for watching. Look forward to seeing you again.